I assign officials from Joseph, Oregon to Huntington, Oregon, and all spots in between. So I have a stable of about 40 guys, all with varying levels of experience, and I do my best to pair those people up and allow people to learn, allow people to teach, and allow people just to work at their craft and get better at it. I was in college up here at Eastern Oregon, and at the time the association meetings were held in Quinn Coliseum, and I was up there one night and I thought, oh, this will be interesting. So I just went in and kind of sat down and listened, and at the time Kevin Foster was the commissioner, and so I went up and introduced myself and said I'd be interested in officiating. Back in, you can call them the good old days, our association would send, if there was a set of JV games and a set of varsity games, he would send 4 people to cover the JV games, and then he'd have 4 other people to come in and do the varsity games. So 2 of you would do the girls JV, 2 other people would do the boys JV, and same situation for the varsity. Over time, our numbers have depleted to the point now where we typically work double headers, so to speak. We'll send 2 people to cover the JV set. So they'll do a girls JV and a boys JV, and then they're done. And same with the varsity. Either 2 or 3 people will work the girls varsity and the boys varsity. And I think I officially started in 1991 and blew my knee out in 93 and came back in about 95, and I've been officiating ever since. And I was the president of the association for a number of years, and at that time Lee Lowe was the commissioner, and he was looking to step away from being commissioner, and he thought that I would be pretty good at doing that stuff because we helped Lee all the time with the scheduling and the stuff that had to happen for school contact and stuff. So I took on basketball 5 years ago, and took on baseball 8 or 9 years ago, and it's an interesting process because you have 40 distinct individuals, and all of them have, I don't know whether to call it ego, but at some point they all need some massaging of some kind. And some of them are harder to massage than others. And what we as an association, if I have problems with what I'm doing for schedules, then I'll reach out to the board, because in essence I work for the board. I am not a board member. I try to do whatever I can to move the association forward. If the board wants me to move in a different direction as far as assignments go, that's where I'll head. I was very successful as an official, have been very successful. I've done 4 state championship games, 8 state championship final site tournaments, and I have a broad range of skills that I can offer to the entire association. Even the guys that have been to state tournaments but maybe haven't gotten over the hump to get that state championship game, I have information that will help them. The problem is trying to figure out, how do I deliver that? Because sometimes it's similar to my kids. I got one kid that doesn't care if he gets 75 cents for something, but the other one wants $1.25. And so I have to be very careful about how I deliver that information. Sometimes I can just give it to them blunt. Other times I kind of have to go around the corner like, hey, you remember this play? That's how you can get better for that play. Sometimes I can just cut right through it. Move, do this, and we're done. And I enjoy doing that kind of stuff. And the association has really talented individuals. I've got at least a dozen guys that really spend time working and honing their skills. If they're not at a meeting, then they're watching video clips. They'll download, there's 2 different video streaming things that they can join. One of them is Huddle, one of them is Crossover, and they have just endless amounts of videos, and some about rough post play, some about traveling, some about illegal screens. There's content everywhere for them to learn and work and get better at their stuff. And then I have guys that just come to the meetings, don't input a lot, and they kind of stay at the same level. They're not ready to see an upward move yet. And all of these things that I'm talking about right now, it's kind of across the board, from basketball through baseball and softball. All of these same hurdles exist. And I do what I can to guide them through it. And OSAA has actually asked us to develop a mentoring program, which on the surface is a wonderful idea. And the reason I say on the surface is because the only way you're going to get something from a mentoring program is to be willing to be mentored. And if you're not ready to be mentored, then the mentor is wasting his time trying to give you that information. And we fall back to the same problem. How does the mentor deliver that message? And I asked the association, how would you like that to happen? And one of my officials said, you just got to be honest with them. And I understood what he was saying, but if you just came right out and said, that was one of the worst officiated games I've ever seen, have you really done your job as a mentor? I mean, it would carry the same weight as, hey, you know, everything looks great. But you give them nothing to define what made that game great for you. And so I don't know whether it's a mandate or a suggestion at this point for the mentoring program, but we are going to implement into the program a mentoring feature. And the people that want to be mentored will reach out to me, and then they're going to have an opportunity to decide who they would like to mentor them. And that gives them some sense of kind of ownership of, like, I think I can take advice from official A. That being said, the board wanted to have just a little bit of control over that, just to kind of sign off on that partnership. And I told them that's fine if that's what you guys want to do. It's just an extra step. But I think what we're going to find out is we're going to have 4 officials that maybe pick the same mentor. And that could be daunting. And it could even be a case where the mentor wants to be mentored also. So how do you make all of those strings fit? And it's a nice problem, because I really think it's a good program. One of the problems that I see with the mentoring program is baseball and softball. At this particular year, we're servicing 4 schools total. Enterprise, Wallowa, and Joseph will have a combined schedule for softball and baseball. Union will have baseball and softball. LeGrand and Baker will have baseball and softball and the different levels. Union and the Enterprise schools, they'll have a varsity schedule only. So the only lower level stuff that I have for baseball and softball is the JV level, a 4A JV level, and then maybe some freshman games. That makes it real tough. I mean, because the analogy has always been, if you're doing a 4A JV game, that's the equivalent of a 2A varsity game, a 1A, 2A varsity game. And although no trophies are given out for that game, that they're officiating at the JV level, parents and players, that's the game that they've been preparing for. So they are wanting the same respect level or knowledge level to allow that game to happen fairly. And with basketball, we have so many more learning opportunities. We service junior highs, so it's real easy to send even someone my age, or even someone like my son. He can go, and he's 18 years old, but he can go work junior high games. And he can start getting better at the craft as a senior in high school. So now if he wants to move wherever he wants to go, he's going to have a little bit of a knowledge base moving forward. And next year, it wouldn't be any question, he would be ready for and able to do JV stuff to make his craft kind of start going up a little bit. We don't have that opportunity with baseball and softball. And our average age of baseball, softball guys is higher than the states. I want to say our youngest official for baseball and softball, 44. And I think our oldest is 68. So we're not getting any younger, and we're not getting anybody younger coming in. And that's its own separate problem that we always have. I think what drives people to officiating, and one of the things that we saw drive people to officiating, I want to say 5 or 6 years ago, everybody's expenses were higher. I mean, remember, gas was, $5 a gallon, and people were looking for a way to make extra income. And the varsity level games, they're in the neighborhood of $50, $55 a ball game per official. The JV stuff is about $10 cheaper or $10 less. But that's the nice thing, I guess, about the way that we handle it. At least they know they're getting 2 of those because they're going to be working 2 games on that night. And there's a mileage that they get. And so the mileage and the game check is not bad. One of the problems that we have is distance. It's if you and I were going to go do a game in Joseph, one of us would be driving and getting the mileage. The other one gets a minimum mileage, but it's very minuscule in comparison to what the driver gets. So what I try to do is schedule you and I to go to Joseph once, and then maybe you and I go to Huntington once, and you drive one way, and then I'll drive the other way, and then everybody kind of is getting drawing from the same pool. And but I think people get into it because they feel like maybe they have something to give back. A lot of our officials played at a high level, have officiated at high levels, and now have kind of dropped back from the college scene. And some people just do it for exercise. And you get plenty of exercise. Over the course of a 4A varsity set, you're looking at close to 5 miles of up and down. And when that game is over, you know that you just worked 2 ball games at the 4A level. And it's mentally fatiguing too, because you could say contact up here, and it's like, man, that was a lot of contact. And if you had time to think that already, the ball's not even in that area anymore. I mean, they could have already dumped it down. Now they're getting ready to get a lay-in. So you passed on that call. It's like, oh, well, then you're beating yourself up as you're going up and back down the court. And now there's another big contact that you miss. So mentally, it can be challenging too. But we're trying to alleviate some of that mental fatigue by adding that 3rd official to varsity contests. This is the first year that all levels, 1A through 6A, the final sites will have 3-person coverage for every game. So there's going to be 18 officials at the final site. And Baker's unique at the 1A level because it's only at one school. So their tournament starts on a Wednesday. They'll play 4 games on a Wednesday, and then they start into the 6 games on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And so the 4A is split between Forest Grove High School and Pacific University. They'll play 4 at Pacific, they'll play 4 at Forest Grove, and then they just kind of mix them in. And then obviously after day 2, you're starting to lose teams. Teams have been knocked out. So now you can stay at Forest Grove to finish up that site. It is interesting that when I'm just walking around town or I'll be at the store and, well, what do you think about that call? You know, I mean, boy, that was such a bad call. You know, you'll just sitting somewhere and it's like, I understand what you think. I do. And it really is economies of scale, so to speak, because I was thinking about this on the way down. That poor set of officials for the New Orleans game, that was obviously not very good. Most of our calls don't even approach that. But we have officials that feel bad when they miss a call. And they know they miss a call. But at least they're able to ask the coach or talk to the coach about it. Like, Coach, you know what? I just missed that. I missed it. And nearly all of them accept that because there's really no place for them to go to continue to argue. Because you've already humanized the situation. I missed that one. I'll work harder to make sure I don't miss it again. And kind of leads me to the, Billy's mommy and daddy, and grandparents and uncles and aunts and stuff. And at times I've almost thought the pay structure is completely reversed. It should be completely reversed. Because the games that happen at the lower level, that's where everything happens. That's where all the little funny rules that you hopefully you're in your rule book reading, that's where they happen. By the time you get to the varsity level, everything is so much cleaner and it presents itself so much better that the fouls almost call themselves. And you get paid more for it. But you're really working hard at the junior high level. I mean, you got kids bumping into each other. You got kids that don't know how to screen. You got kids that don't know how to dribble all the way yet. They dribble like this, and it's like, okay, if I called that the rest of the day, then I'm going to be here for 8 hours. So you talk to the coaches and let them know that traveling's going to happen. Double dribbles, they're going to happen. So if you bark at us about it, be careful because your kids are doing it too, and we can whistle those violations. But whenever I send a younger official with an older official, I'm sending that older official with some guidance. Don't let people run over the younger official. Just step right in and tell the coaches, the book, whoever it is that's having a problem, that no, if you got a problem, come through me, because conflict resolution is something that we work on routinely because of the different ways that conflicts can pop up. And that's always been what I try to do. There's always a time towards the end of the season where I might send 2 younger officials to cover a set of games just to get a feel for how they're doing and what they've learned from the other officials. But I try to go watch those games and offer them tips as the game moves on. So at times I can help them immediately. Other times I would have to review a tape to get information to where I could help them from the tape. The most common question I get is who's working the game. It really is. I mean, I have the things that I do throughout the week, which is I'm at work a lot, but I go to the Grand Country Club and a couple nights a week for tacos or for other social events and stuff. and either a parent of a player or an aunt of a player or something, they'll come and say, hey, who's working the ball game? Well, I know who's working the ball game, but I just like kind of tell them, I'm not sure who's working the ball game. For whatever the reason, there are officials that people identify with, both good and bad. All the time he blows his whistle, it's against Baker. All the time he blows his whistle, it's against LeGrand. And it's always a whistle on their child or their relation, and it's just like, I don't like them. But I think that's one of the questions I get a lot is, who's working the game? When we get tested, we test every year, we certify every year, and we want people in the rule book. Right. Sometimes people just don't know the rules, and that's a recipe for disaster. Not knowing the rules is just a recipe for disaster, because now a coach has unfettered access to just run you up one side and down the other. Well, don't they have to do this? And we get to do this, and then you're like a deer in the headlights, like, okay. So you're not even in charge of the game anymore. So then that's where it'll look real biased, because one coach may know the rules better than this coach. So now it's, well, I can just ride these guys the whole game. Yeah, that was, I mean, and those situations, I'm always leery of those things happening. I've also seen it at a state tournament. And for that same reason, OSAA has a minimum conflict of interest policy that all the associations now have. If you and I were brothers and you were coaching at a school, I would not be able to officiate your games, is kind of the basic overview of the conflict of interest. It does go deeper, and some of it goes too deep, but that's when they said you have to have a conflict of interest policy. That immediately told me that someone somewhere abused that system of brother working a brother's game, father working a son's game, something to that effect. Somebody abused it, and they abused it enough that they said, okay, we got to start having some conflict of interest things. Geographically, we're challenged. When you get out to Eastern Oregon, when you get to Joseph, when you get to Wallowa, when you get to Baker, or even here in LeGrand, someone that you're related to probably works in the district, which technically is part of that conflict of interest policy. Teachers, I have a fair amount of teachers. So if I have a teacher that works in the LeGrand School District, he shouldn't work LeGrand games because of just the appearance that, well, of course you got that call. He's a LeGrand school teacher. It's a situation that you're not going to win in either way. If that LeGrand teacher goes to a LeGrand game and does perfectly and LeGrand wins, then LeGrand won because of them. That would be the story from the opposing team. Or LeGrand won despite what he was doing. So it's a no-win situation, and I agree with 62% of the conflict of interest policy. The other ones I don't necessarily assign a lot of blame to them. As a commissioner, I do have the ability to contact athletic directors and let them know, hey, I would like to send referee A, B, and C to do your games. And then I identify the possible conflict with each official. And if the athletic directors sign off on those guys, then I'm okay to send them. But in the case where I don't get that email sent and then something goes sideways, typically I spend most of the morning on the phone with OSAA, and they're telling me again to look at my conflict of interest policy and follow it. Early on, around October, I will request their basketball schedules, which most of the schools have, a basic schedule. And then I assign, I put the values to where they're going to be at home, and then I bill them, and then they pay me for the entire season up front. Typically, there's going to be a second billing to just even things out, because maybe I was planning for this much mileage, but maybe it was more than I had planned for. So a second billing would come from the school. Yeah, so it's just your home games are the ones that you're billed for. And so, for instance, Baker played Mac High at Baker for the boys GOL championship. Baker also played the LeGrand girls for the same championship in Baker. Those games were not on the schedule because we didn't know who was going to win the GOL when we started the season. That's 2 additional games that will be billed to Baker, and Baker will pay them out of the gate. If they're interested in becoming an official, I would urge them just to reach out to a game official and find out when their meetings are. One of the things that people probably don't realize is we have about 15 or 16 meetings a year. That's from October to a week ago. It's basically every week or every 10 days we're having a meeting. And I would urge you to come to a meeting, reach out and kind of semi-mentor, but we continually are looking for retention and recruiting. And we can bring a person that really doesn't know that much about it, we can bring them all the way to where they want to be. And I would urge them to come to a meeting. And it may not even be the sport that you are interested in, but at least you would start getting the idea of how the meetings are run, the things that you talk about that are pertinent to the sport that you're interested in. Because and go to the OSAA website also. The OSAA has officials links as to how to become an official, who to contact for your particular area. And when I get one of those, I just try to flag it in my phone, and then I roll back through my contacts to make sure I haven't missed anybody that has expressed interest. And then I reach back out to them and let them know, hey, we're going to have a meeting Wednesday night, 6 o'clock. We are constantly looking for people to help us at all levels of officiating. And if you are interested, happy to give you my number, and just reach out to me and I'll give you the information. I know most of the other sport commissioners local. So even if you're interested in just volleyball, perfect. Reach out to me. I can put you in contact with Casey. If you're interested in football, I can put you in contact with Pete and Joel. Obviously, I have 3 sports that I can take care of just right away. And I actually had 4 high school aged kids work at least 30 ball games between them at the junior high level. And all 4 of them next year will be ready for JV basketball. And that's because of the time that we spend with our younger officials. And the opportunity exists, and we'd love to get the opportunity out for anybody that's able.